I'm hoping to start off the conversation. I'm hoping to start off with some conversation just about some introductions. And if you guys want to take the time to introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little bit about your time at Penn State, your role at the Daily Collegian when you were here, and kind of where that's led you and where you're at now.
I can dive in. Again, I'm Kelly Ruff. I am the Chief Brand Officer for Root Inc. We are an insurtech company that is unbreaking the really archaic industry of insurance with a platform all around fairness and making it more fair for all. I was a journalism major. It was so funny when I looked at these questions. I thought role at the Collegian. I mean, I think I had them all. Didn't everyone? Doesn't everyone? Isn't that how it still works? But I was a beat reporter. I was on night desk. I think I was one of the first or second editors of the very new digital Collegian that I was thinking I should, if you want a good laugh, you should see what that used to look like. It's beyond embarrassing. But at the time was, cutting edge, but it was pretty funny. So I spent many an evening there, kind of working my way through the staff.
Awesome.
And I am Liz Johnson, and I was an ed PR major at Penn State. I worked at the Collegian all 4 years. I started fall semester of my freshman year in the office, and I worked most of the time in the marketing department and was marketing manager at one point. I am right now a freelance consultant. I call myself a consultant for content marketing and social media. So I do strategy, content creation, and social media campaigns for a number of different clients. Right now, many of them are in the financial industry, but I was also heavy into the event industry, which slowed down and is picking back up again. Prior to that, I worked at a business-to-business marketing communication firm outside of DC for 11 years. And so that's really where I gained a lot of different experiences, taking on a number of different roles while I was there, which led me to be able to go out on my own 4 years ago and really be able to service clients in a full, almost a full service capacity related to content.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And we have a couple questions here just related to career paths and what you guys, any advice that you have for us seeking careers in the field and being successful. So first question that I have is, what are some soft skills that you recommend we start working on, or some of those softer skills that you think are necessary for being successful in the industry?
I think I set myself up for now. I have to answer first every time. Right? And I should have added, I didn't just show up one day and become a chief brand officer. I went the editorial route. Immediately after leaving Penn State, I went to New York and worked at Hearst magazines. I got my start at Country Living, which is right in the middle of Manhattan, which makes no sense. But I was an editorial assistant, literally the last person on the masthead. I worked for the managing editor and would try to get any writing clips I could, but I also bubble wrapped more antiques than you could imagine. I was like the lowest person at every photo shoot that was making sure things didn't break. And I also was able to spend a lot of time with the art department. From there, I transitioned into, I followed one of the editors over to Martha Stewart, which is where I spent probably the majority of my career in New York, where I was able to transition editorial skills into more of an advertising and concepting field. I was able to take some night classes at NYU and really develop my portfolio, all while kind of in the safety of my own current job, pushing the brand, pushing the edges, the envelope around a brand that doesn't have a lot to push around, right? Everything has a picture of Martha and the word beautiful is in every headline. But I was able to propose a couple great kind of really out there concepts that I was able to use in my portfolio later to land me a job at a branding firm. So To answer this soft skill question, I think the unifying theme in all of those was that I was super scrappy. I am well into my career now, and if people would still describe me as scrappy. I can't encourage that enough, that I was always just digging to find things to do or connections to kind of prove this bigger, both strategic, creative, and editorial skill set. I'd say the second soft skill too, just around people tend to over communicate, and the ability to edit, organize themes, and present thoughts, ideas, concepts. It's something that I look back at my time at the Collegian, and I think this probably doesn't even happen anymore, but you had to write to a specific character count within layout, right? Like the I just saw Jordan on there. Hi, Jordan. And I think that is that's an element that's still very true to what I do today and how that applies. So those are kind of my two big skill sets. Being able to edit and narrow down, and just be scrappy as heck.
Yeah, I would second that idea of being scrappy. I think a lot of what I did while I worked at an ad agency was learn new things and take on roles that weren't necessarily assigned to me. When I graduated, social media didn't really exist. And now it is part of my career. So, learning that, teaching that, understanding how to apply it in a business sense, and have it make sense for business and financial goals, and not just for fun. And then same with content marketing. I, began to understand what that was, and then educated our clients on what it was and why it was important, and, grew our business that way, and then took on that role as director of content because I essentially created it. So I definitely second the idea of being scrappy. I would say time management, which was like probably the number one thing that I got out of my experience at the Collegian, was just being able to balance all the work that you do at the Collegian with all of your schoolwork and all of your extracurriculars and other things. Like the time management, everything's deadline driven in journalism and advertising, marketing. So you're always going to be under deadline, and you're always going to have 16 different things that need your attention and need to be done. So that was a big one. And then I would also just say the concept of being able to think strategically and be able to see the big picture and not just the role that you're playing, like understanding how what you're working on, your project, fits into ultimately the goals of the campaign, and how the campaign achieves the goals of the client ultimately.
Okay, great. And then kind of piggybacking off of the idea of a soft skill, what do you think are some hard skills that we could be learning or developing or working on, again, to be successful in the field?
Liz, tell me anytime if you want to jump in for me.
I was going to say writing was going to be one of the hard skills that I think is like the most critical skill you can come away with. I do think, exactly to Kelly's point, like the more you can write and communicate succinctly, clearly, persuasively, is going to take you far. Because I think what employers are finding right now is like really strong writing skills are few and far between. So you're kind of a gem if you can really communicate your ideas effectively.
I'll add to that too. It's interesting. My whole career, I've always been around people like me, creatives, people that grew up in these spaces. And that's not the case right now. I work in a large tech org, and where one of these kids is not like the other, and that's me. And these are people that have come up through places like Facebook, like Twitter, like Amazon, and their worlds revolve around metrics. If I think about a hard skill that would also pair well with the skills you have, it's understanding when how people are looking at performance, how they're really measuring that, how OKR docs, objectives and key results, how you're measuring KPIs, your key performance indicators. Those were all things that I wish that I would have had. I think I'm already diving into the next question, but I think that's something that can really round out how you can be even more prepared, because it's this balance of both sides that's super rare. And we know that that side can always be taught, but some of the soft skills that Liz and I are chatting about can't, right? You have them, right? If you're at the collegian, you have them, right? So I think that can kind of make you a double threat.
Great. So now that we have some skills to start working on, what is something that you wish that you would have known about the field or your specific industry before you jumped into it?
I think when I was going through the advertising curriculum and the classes, there was just an intense focus on working at a consumer-driven ad agency. Everyone was thinking of going to New York, and there wasn't much focus on all of these other options that are out there. The business to business side of advertising is huge, and it works. It might not seem as glamorous as like working on the Coca-Cola account or something like that, but like it operates the same way. You're still selling to people, and you're finding the arguments that make the case for your brand over a different brand. So all of the things that you're learning and studying apply, and there's just a lot of different opportunities to take than consumer commercials and the glitzy and glamorous stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. Because yeah, you're right. There's you don't realize what all is out there. And I loved what you said earlier, Liz, too, that after a little bit of time, like getting your feet wet, you can start to build your own path or make your own role, as you said. And I think that if I wish I would have known earlier to start asking or building out or framing up a different role where I saw a need. One of the biggest pivots in my career is I was at my current job, I was hired to brand this company. And the original assignment was, okay, we have 3 months until this big board meeting. Can you come in and brand? That was my role. I was the VP of brand, but I started to see elements of other, like just connectivity that wasn't happening between the performance marketing group and the creative team, or there was opportunities for more cross-functional work that aligned that would eventually reach the consumer that wasn't happening. And so I just put like a quick proposal of just like, hey, here's just a quick plan of how I know I've only been here for a little bit, but there's just some things I see happening. And that led to the person I reported to. The point said, you should show this to the CEO. I showed it to the CEO and he said, you know what, we need someone to lead this. That's you. And I said, oh no, that's not what I meant. I just meant I thought this would be easier. But that simple thing of just like knowing that you could go ahead and ask that and do that, it changed everything. And then I became an officer of the company. But had I known, I think about all the times that I'd thought about doing that when I was younger, didn't know I could or didn't have the guts to do it. So that's my take.
That's very insightful. So kind of, again, just jumping back off of that, is there anything that you found yourself very unprepared for or unaware of when you were first starting your career? I know it's kind of similar, but any huge surprises?
I don't know. Not necessarily huge surprises or feeling unprepared. Like I think both working at the collegian and just the education at Penn State is giving you like a great foundation for starting out your career. I think that don't underestimate how much getting just 1 year of experience on your resume helps. So if you don't get like your dream job right out of the gate, like work hard, get experience, make contacts, make connections, and your next job is going to be a lot closer to what you want to get.
I'd add, in any role, politics come into play, and you'll always find that. Not on mute. And I think you'll find that politics, things that kind of seem as you're working with different people and different types of people, it's always easy to get sucked into that. But then you'll laugh, something then, years later, you thought that was the most important thing, and it wasn't at all. So I think that would just be a piece of advice that, that there's navigation to that, and there's a skill set to staying above it. And I think that skill set of staying above politics and kind of the personal issues as you navigate different companies and different sets of people can really pay off if you can stay above it.
Great. So I'm also curious about some of the big successes or large accomplishments that you guys have achieved in your career so far, and what that's been like for you.
I'll jump in. This is funny and feels like bragging, but I know Megan caught a talk that I did a few months ago. One of the big campaigns I've done in the past year was tapping into really relevant cultural conversations. And I'll try to say this as succinctly as I can. NASCAR, of all things, something I knew nothing about, never thought I'd be involved in. I read an article in the Tampa Bay Tribune, still pays just to read papers from all over. And it talked about the only Black driver in NASCAR and who initiated the ban of the Confederate flag following the murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, countless others. And then there was a new shaped rope found in his garage stall. President Trump at the time came after him via Twitter. And this article had a line in it that said that NASCAR's driver is Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace finds his voice even if no sponsors. And I thought, I work at a tech startup, right? We're just about to go public. We are the last people in the world that should sponsor and do a sports sponsorship and do a huge campaign around this. But I thought, this man stands for progress and change. We stand for progress and change. What if we went in as a sponsor? And I knew I had this idea in my head that we could make a really powerful spot. I'll drop the link in the chat. But being able to call my CEO and say, I have this crazy idea. And I told him why. And given everything that was happening in the world, he didn't hesitate and said, go for it. Being able to film this very triggering spot with a lot of content that had the Confederate flag, that was bringing a person who wasn't exactly quite comfortable in his role as an advocate yet, working with NASCAR, who thought this was a terrible idea and didn't agree to allow us to do this. Bubba Wallace is owned by Michael Jordan's organization. His organization did not support this, but we knew we had a powerful message, and I put everything on the line to put it out there. And I had a good budget to make the film. I didn't have a lot to put it out there in terms of paid media, but I had the idea that if we made a strong enough spot, it would get some good media pickup, right? It was covered in the media. I was in Fast Company. It was on CNBC. It's going to be featured in a 6-series Netflix spot coming out in February. So it's the whole premise comes back to believing in something so much that I was willing to give up months of sleep, fight against, big organizations. I had the backing of my CEO, but I still to this day am incredibly proud. I'm really proud to say that he was able to get a few other sponsors, have a team. He just won his first race at the top level. So he's the second Black driver to ever win in 57 years, right? I mean, that's huge, right? This sport that had Confederate flags flying everywhere a year ago doesn't have any now. And they have, one of their most recent champions is a Black male who wouldn't have even been allowed into those races not that long ago. So long story, I'll drop the spot in. I'm always super passionate about talking about social issues and how a brand steps into that space. And we've kind of been known for that now and continue to work on additional campaigns around that.
That's awesome. I would say for me, it might not be just like one project or one like big success, but like the past 4 years building my own brand and being able to self-select the clients that I work with and feel like I work for people that I really enjoy working with and spending time with and believe in their success has been really gratifying. And I was on a Twitter chat a couple of years ago where I said, like, my goal was to be known as the person that anytime someone needed content or copywriting, they were like, someone would say, oh, well, you have to call Liz. And I think now, just a couple of years later, I'm pretty much at that point. I'm getting more calls and requests for copy and content than I can take in, that I have the bandwidth to do. So, you know, that's led me to be able to charge more for that. And so I think the growth and success of something that I never really had any intention of doing, and when I started out in my career, it makes me feel very proud every time I get a new person that contacts me for a proposal, or I get another piece published, or my client has some kind of, you know, success, like brings on a new client of their own because of stuff that we've done.
Awesome. Those are both so great. Thank you for sharing. So we all know with every huge accomplishment, there's about 4 times as many setbacks. So I'm curious if you could share a time that maybe you were set back or overcame a really large challenge in your career.
I mean, yeah, I have setbacks every day. There's tons of stumbling blocks. I think, you know, I'm constantly putting out new creative, and it's wild sometimes what I think will perform so well and doesn't, right? And it's interesting stuff that I think, oh, that's not going to do well, and it does. I think I'm constantly having to look at the data and the feedback I get and then navigate around that. I'll keep using the example I just gave, and I dropped the video in the chat. The biggest setback was that people said, no, we're not letting you do this. We don't think this is the appropriate message. We've already covered the Confederate flag. Why do you keep bringing this particular issue up? And it was a matter of working with kind of saying, okay, I'm not stepping back, but I'm going to find new ways to answer this call. I'm going to find new ways to edit this that make it, that make this still work. Rather than backing down, I navigated different ways to approach it. And sometimes that can be 1 or 2 tries, and sometimes that can be, you know, 10 or 15 different cuts of something. And I think that's always, oh, thanks, Jordan. That's my line. Progress owes no apology. Do you know how many people told me no one will get that line? A lot of people. And that is based on Donald Trump told him to apologize. So
I got it right away.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's another thing. Like, you've got to take feedback from everyone, but also think about which feedback you're going to listen to.
100% agree. Everyone has opinions. It's an art to learn who's to listen to. So, yeah.
I would say for me, it's just setbacks career-wise was like starting out. You know, I graduated in 2002, which was the first class to kind of graduate after September 11th, and jobs were kind of few and far between in that moment. And so I took a temp job to get started, and I managed to parlay sort of an administrative assistant job into a marketing assistant job. And like I said, just after getting that first year of experience, I was able to take that to my next job and do something more aligned with what I really wanted to be doing and spending my time doing. I think, you know, if you're graduating this year, you know, like, who knows where we're going to be at in the world. And I think, you know, take what you can get and like I said, build the experience and look for other things that you can do that align with what you want to be doing. And then, you know, you'll get there. Like, don't give up, like, keep pushing.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Those are both great stories, and both the successes and the challenges are very insightful. So switching gears a little bit to more of like the industry, I'm curious how the industry is changing or how you have seen it change over recent years.
Yeah, I would say it's like 100% technology. I'm sure Kelly would probably agree. Like it's all about technology, and I think there's a lot more options now than there were before, and just in terms of what you can do as a marketer. So, everything from social to web content and marketing automation and all the things that are happening because of technology and because of data and because of being able to have the data to know your customers even better. You can like segment and personalize your messaging to people a lot more than you were ever able to before. All of that is creating new opportunities and like new things. Like 5 years from now, there's things that we're going to be doing that don't exist right now. It's just going to keep happening. So you just have to keep learning.
Yeah, I agree with everything Liz said. The constant is the amount of change. I think the pace of the work too is fast. I think we see, I see quality standards sometimes dipping for the sake of speed. You know what, it's helpful too. Even if you guys would drop in the chat, like what your ideal entry-level job, like what your ideal jobs would be, just so we kind of get a sense of where you guys are falling in terms of, are you on editorial side? Are you on marketing? Are you on sales? Like, I'd love to know, like, just if that's helpful for us to kind of tailor this more to you. But this idea with tech comes speed and automation, and the challenge within the industry is then how do you maintain quality working against those two? So, okay, we got reporting, we got brand marketing. Okay. All right. Yeah, I went down the editorial route reporting and moved into brand marketing. So I think that's another important part of this. We've talked about these foundations that we're emphasizing allow you to move from one to one.
I think too, a lot like with reporting, a lot of the skills between public relations, reporting, and content mix. So a lot of people will go between those different roles over the course of their career. So it's all kind of like based in that really strong writing as a foundation. And then, based on what your actual job entails, you can build a portfolio and you can tailor your writing to those directions. But there's, a lot of the publications have content houses now, and like, so there's a little bit more mixing than there used to be.
Great. So are there any specific things that you would recommend? We talked about the hard and the soft skills, but are there anything that you think that we should be doing right now at Penn State, at the Collegian, anything in specific that we should be doing to kind of get our foot in the door or set ourselves up for a good start in the industry?
It'd be interesting to know. Yeah, I graduated in 99. Goodness. At that time, the portfolio was everything, right? And it used to be, well, I don't have experience, but the Collegian gives you plenty of things to put in your portfolio, plenty of connections. And at that time, because of where we all were at the Collegian, we all had great internships with more experience and samples to put in. But I see so many people put together, if you haven't had an opportunity to create a portfolio, but still making one, all based on anything, personal experience, or just taking a quick case study on a brand and evolving it to the way you think it is. I think a lot of places are giving, I know we do this, an assignment, and it's a matter of just crushing it and taking that assignment super seriously as part of, because for entry level, it's just tough to understand where you're coming in at. And I think finding a place that, if there is an assignment, that's always a sign of if there's like a quick test type thing, that's always a good sign of a company, because everyone else in there, it's not based on where you went to school or the job you had before. It's about just like pure effort and how you approach something. So I always think that's a good sign of a place to work.
So I was interviewing someone for an article that I was writing for a client, and he's like a business consultant. And he made the point that when businesses go about putting together a proposal for a project that they want to get, they often talk a lot about themselves and the past work that they've done and things of that nature. Whereas the reader really wants to know how they would fit in, like how they would address their specific problem and their specific needs. And I think that could be applied to like when you're practicing your interviewing skills, like asking really good questions that show that you understand their business, and then how you can fit into their business and meet their needs, rather than just like solely talking about yourself and answering the questions like, well, my experience is this. I think especially for entry level, that's probably like a good way, since you don't have a ton of experience to draw on, to like flip it a little bit and like really make yourself feel like you're like a must-have.
I love that, Liz. I cannot agree with that more. I see that happen so often in interviews at all levels, where it's just talking about me. Some of the best interviews I've had have been around, okay, these interviews, you talk to several people. If I'm on the back end, if I'm one of the last to interview someone, I'll say, you've talked to enough people. Tell me the questions you have. And you can tell so much about a person based on what they ask. And you immediately understand how well they know the business, the company, what their personal vision for what the role could be. Even if they're taking kind of some wild guesses, it's never about, well, was that the right answer? It's more about how the thinking they had in it. So yes, that's amazing advice.
Awesome. So kind of piggybacking off the idea of entry level, I don't know about anybody else here, but I'm a senior and I'm currently just like trying so hard to get my first job. So I'm curious what entry level looks like, what it looked like for you guys, what you think it looks like now, and where you recommend someone start their job search, or just any advice you have on for someone in my position right now.
Yeah, entry level, I think I talked about me bubble wrapping antiques, but my first job was in the Hearst building, which is, every magazine, like Cosmo was the floor right above. It was like Devil Wears Prada every day. I was, incredibly intimidated in the elevator for sure. But my first job, I won't even tell you what it paid, but it was definitely poverty level in New York at the time. But it was just about the experience. I took it knowing that, okay, this is about the experience. This is to make connections. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. As I said, I worked hard and was able to make connections with some of the editors. So when they moved on, they were at a new place and thought, oh, who'd be good for this, Kelly. So I think there's that first job you can sometimes look at it truly as a stepping stone to what the next one is, and quickly be able to identify what you can get out of it and emphasize that more. I knew those relationships were a key part of that, so I focused on that. I knew that asking, hey, for some extra, like, why don't I just draft up some, headlines or some cut lines, stuff like that, was able to, why don't I pitch a few stories, even if they never saw the light of day, at least they understood the type of worker I was.
Yeah, I'd probably start out just looking on LinkedIn to get like a sense of, what jobs people are posting for. There's certainly a lot of other sites, Indeed and Glassdoor and things like that are helpful as well. I would get involved in, like, if there's discussions, if there's like Twitter chats that happen regularly on a particular industry that you're interested in, like, get in on those, participate in those regularly, because those people become really tight communities. And so if they have something open up and they know you, just from like not even knowing you in person, but they know you through Twitter, like they feel like they know you. And that could be an avenue that could really help too. And yeah, I think just let people in your network know that you're looking, because I think it's a constant game of someone just being at the right place at the right time. Someone goes, hey, I'm looking for this role and we've been having a hard time finding someone. And then the person goes, oh, I think I just saw, this person's graduating. So just keep yourself out there.
Awesome. That's such great advice. So starting at entry level, that's where we're all going to be at. So I'm curious of like what moving up looks like and how kind of you've navigated your career from start to where you are now and kind of what that progression looks like in this specific industry.
Let's see. So it's interesting to reflect back on this. Yes, I started out strictly on the editorial side, and then was able, as I was saying, kind of to add to my portfolio and shift more into brand marketing, advertising, concepting. I also think moving up to leadership roles also can mean leaving a perfectly good spot too. There's kind of this moment where you think, I'm gonna, like, this is all good, I could just stay right here, or I could take a shift at this other place, or move in. So I think there's some like being comfortable with kind of these uncomfortable leaps of faith, right? I think imposter syndrome is real. It's especially real for a lot of females I see on the call. It's navigating through that. It's also just demonstrating that you can do it. That example I gave of just me putting together like a quick assessment of where there were some connectivity issues and some improvements. I mean, it didn't take me that long, and it was just like a several page document, and it triggered this entire series of events that put me in this position today. So I think it's kind of just putting yourself a little out there, and also stepping into these roles, even when you don't think you're ready, right? Someone believes you are. It's kind of taking that and saying, all right, I think in this role I have now, I think I said no twice to it, which is absurd, right? But at the time I thought, I think I'm good, right? So moving up can look, I think, different. It can look a lot of different ways. But it's getting over being comfortable in the setting you currently are. That kind of seems to be the common theme for me.
Yeah, I could add to that, like just get comfortable with being uncomfortable to move up. Don't say no to the challenging projects. Even now, the projects that I take on, I go, can I really do that? Do I think I can do that? And then, yeah, I can do that. But you're constantly gonna feel that to move up. And I never had like a ladder where it was like, okay, if you do X, Y, Z after a year, you're gonna be here. It was always taking on new work, asking for the promotion, moving, at one point I asked for more responsibility at my job, and they were like, well, no, we're fine with where you are right now. And I was like, okay. And I sent out 3 resumes and I got a different job, at a different agency where I wanted to be anyway. So, make your own promotions. Don't wait for someone else to kind of promote you up the ladder. Especially if you work at smaller places, the clear ladder doesn't always exist. And yeah, I mean, it's all going to be, it's never clear cut, I would say, but definitely taking on the challenges and saying yes to things or saying no to things if you think it's not really the right thing, and letting something that might seem like a good opportunity go by because there's going to be the next thing that's going to come up.
Awesome. Great advice. So I think we all know that connections are huge in this industry. So I'm very interested in any advice that you have on making connections, and then not only making those, but being able to make the most out of them and maintaining good connections and a good network.
Doing events like this, right? Staying in touch, obviously, like the growth of LinkedIn, both just in terms of engagement, but also content that's put out on LinkedIn. That's another thing, Liz mentioned just saying, looking on LinkedIn, it's also putting out POV, like putting out content, author an article, comment and engage. I think that, can go a long way, and the credibility that holds is really powerful. I even think about, this might be like just a corporate fad too, but we have a thing at my company called shadow boards. It's the idea where a non-executive, have you heard that term before? A non-executive can kind of say, hey, I see you're working on this project. I'd love to just, is there any way you could gather a team of more junior people that can also just kind of shadow along on this project and also give insight? And I think asking for for relationships like that within an org can really help you develop longer term connections, especially cross-functionally or in areas that you might not have visibility to. That's just something that I see popping up more and more.
I think LinkedIn does make it easy to facilitate, like, you know where your connections are, like even if they go from job to job, like they're there in your connections. So that's, I always try to link in with people that I've worked with. Then they go somewhere else and they still know where I am and I know where they are. So that's helpful. And I agree, definitely engage, post things, comments on other people's things. That makes it easy to stay in touch without being like obnoxious, I don't know, for lack of a better word. You know, when you can like things and you can like comment on their successes, like it's really a good way to keep in contact with people. I think also, you know, attending like your local industry events, like there's local ag groups, there's local PR groups, like join those associations on the regional level and then like attend like different networking events and things that they do. I think especially early on, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. Local ad fed. I always was very, very involved in those. And then even as I've moved on, being able to take advantage of bigger national conferences is always a great way to connect with people as well. And, you know, I have always fought hard to kind of speak at those too, and try to get, you know, propose, pitch a podium to those, whether it's a small roundtable or something bigger. And I found I make a lot of great connections that way as well.
Yeah, and many of those national conferences have like young professional networking events within them or young professional groups. So it pays to get involved in those.
Yeah, and so many of them have gone virtual, making them more affordable to attend, which they were always so expensive.
Yeah.
Great. So I have one final question, and it's the big question. What advice would you give yourself sitting in our seats when you were? What would you tell your younger self?
I would say, don't just say no to the opportunity because it's not what you thought your career was going to be right now. So, you know, like when you're in college and you're picturing your career, if a different type of opportunity comes along that doesn't fit the mold, don't just say no to it right off the bat. It might just be the perfect thing.
Love that. Always take the call, always take the interview, even if it sounds, I don't want to do that. Yeah, if, you know, at one point I would have thought, what, I went into brand, I'm sold out. I was supposed to, you know, be a journalist, right? But no, this panned out exactly how it should have. But I think that's an important part. Be open to the idea that whatever you think your career is about to go, the direction it's about to go, and it probably won't. And that means you're doing it right.
Awesome. Everything that you guys said was so interesting and really helped me a lot. And I know that it probably helped everybody else listening. So now I want to open it up to you guys. Anybody else that has additional questions for Kelly and Liz to chime in and ask your questions. I know you have some.
Come on, anything.
I know you do.
Abby, it looks like Gianna has raised her hand. I don't know if some people are raising their hands. I don't know if you can see that, or Gianna has.
Yes, I didn't know if she was looking at that.
I'm helping out.
I didn't want to cut her off. Hi, I can't use my camera function right now, but it's really nice to meet and hear from both of you, Kelly and Elizabeth. I'm a senior this year at Penn State, and I'm majoring in broadcast journalism. And I've kind of had some interest in looking toward like either applying for jobs in marketing or editorial positions, or taking like at least a path of learning what those positions would have to offer in different industries besides just journalism and communications. But I guess my question would have to be, for me personally, and really anyone who is kind of in a similar position, what is the best route to take when sort of making that transition of like, oh, curiosity being in that sort of element of like exploring the marketing world and industry, but sort of having more of a journalism background?
I think that journalism and broadcast journalism can really apply, those skills can really apply in, especially in the content marketing. And there's so much that people want to do with video content. And there's a lot of jobs out there for producers of video content, and also like experiences, like actual like in-person experiences that would fit with those type of skills. So I would just like research some jobs related to that. Like I would look for like producer roles or like event roles or things like that, and see if those seem interesting. And you know, like Kelly said, like take the interview if you get it, and then see if you feel like that's the right fit.
Yeah, the ever elusive marketing coordinator role, right? What on earth does that mean? It can mean a million things. So can producer, so can project man, you know, like it's just this, the way that these come out, it's project manager. Depending on the company, those things mean such different things at different places. And I think about those roles at my company that are more entry level, that it's about almost getting into them and figuring, you know, so much of that you won't actually know how your skills even can apply until you kind of get into them. I think those foundations of being able to write tight, being able to quickly identify how you'll measure success, being able to organize and coordinate efforts, right? Those are kind of the universal themes of a lot of these entry-level positions that I think will allow you not only to get in, but then to kind of assess, all right, that's the group I want to migrate next to, or that's the group I want to learn from, or, hey, I'd like to be a project manager on that. I have a lot of my teams run on a Scrum system, and that has been, I have gone through to get my training in those areas too, just to understand that the ability to not be such a subject matter expert, but to have the skill sets to bounce from team to team within an organization, especially when we see teams expanding and decreasing so much right now. Those are quick, those simple, like you can take the courses or you can do your own research, but I think that has been really beneficial too, to be able to go into a setting knowing that, you know, you not only do you come deep in knowing that subject matter, but this idea of being able to apply those skill sets from team to team, I think is really essential.
Thank you.
I just see the question in the chat. I think I just answered it. Yeah, I don't know about like Agile and Scrum and how familiar you guys are with that or how much that's used. But I know within marketing firms, I know we have a pretty sizable creative team, and it runs on that framework, and that just makes it really easy to understand who's the owner, who's the supporting role, knowing that on different projects you might play different roles. So I would definitely look into that skill if you can.
I think also adding to what I said earlier about thinking strategically is also being able to think creatively, not just in terms of being able to write the quippy headline, but thinking about what kind of pieces you could produce that make the most sense for your audience, and like what will really get their attention, and develop, you know, the whole idea with marketing is to develop a buyer preference and to push the buyer from maybe not knowing about your brand at all to preferring your brand over all the other brands. So being able to think about that journey that they're on creatively, and what they need to like be able to make the decision for your brand.
Can I lob a question in too?
Sure.
Can't resist, sorry. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Liz. So the question is, because we're all living it, and since we're talking about some pretty cool creative projects and obviously important work that you're both doing, a quality versus quantity question, right? In a sprint or agile or Slack world, whatever you want to call it, right? That all of the students are going to get dropped right into, they're already kind of in. It's like, I need to respond to this right away, and there's an endless stream of stuff. how do you find time to still sort of focus, I guess, on those big projects, those Bubba Wallace moments, when you kind of need to block out the stream of stuff. So how do you, any advice there to someone entering the workforce now, which again, I don't think we had as big of an issue with in 1999 or 2000 because none of this existed. So it's a partial technology question, but I guess it's a focus question too.
Yeah, I think the collegian trained us well because I worked the night shift and never slept, and that's still what I do. Yeah, does that still happen? I don't know, maybe. I would say, like, I see a lot of still led by the tech. Yeah, I work in a strictly Slack. No one in my company reads emails, but the idea of, I just see a lot of people getting really creative with calendar blocking, the companies that institute no meeting Wednesdays. We just identified a policy called work from where you work best, and kind of actually working with your employer to kind of say, like, I think, we even have developed spaces within the office that are, they break into 3 categories. We're still work from home right now, but we'll start voluntary return to office. And we have focus areas, we have collaboration spaces, and we have social areas. And if you think about it, those are like the 3 ways I try to break down my day too. And I think that just helps me kind of navigate, even in meetings, like make sure there's a social element, but then like, I kind of got to cut it off at some point. We make sure that all meetings end on the 55, not at o'clock. So that gives you 5 minutes. If there's a minute you go over, or you can like, at least like get yourself a little together for the next meeting. There's a lot of just kind of good ways to organize your day that, I'm old school, and I'm, those are hard habits to break. But yeah, you're, especially in this space, you're in meetings nonstop. You're answering a steady stream of Slacks. But if you can't carve out a chunk of time to think, those good ideas don't come from, I had 30 minutes to concept, right? I had 30 minutes to come up with this big idea. It doesn't come that way. It comes from when you're out walking around. It comes from when you're, doing something outside of sitting in your space. So if you can't carve those out, then those ideas are kind of never going to come.
Yeah, I write the best copy right before I go to bed at night. It's super frustrating. I write it in my head and then I forget it by the time I wake up, but it was so good when I was going to bed. I was going to say that, get up and move, try to take breaks so you can go out and walk around and get away from your screen. If you can, get in a place where you have flexibility and you can take a walk and do that call while you're walking, like that will help. I think, like you said, Jordan, we're all right in the middle of this right now. And I think companies are realizing that this is kind of untenable situation to be on video all the time. And they're trying to come up with different ways to like manage that. So I think once you get in somewhere and you see what the culture is like, I think definitely take advantage of the breaks that they offer because you need them.
Or fight for them if they don't give them.
Yeah, so, totally.
Anybody have any more questions?
I have one if I can interject too. mine's for Liz because it's a little bit aspirational. At what point, where was the breaking point to go off on your own and to get the courage to do that? I don't know if I just the story. I don't know if it's a really full question,
Yeah,
but
no,
I fantasized about such a day.
I actually had a good gig going at my agency. I was actually telecommuting. The agency was in DC and I was living in, I still live in New York City. And so I was working from home already anyway, and I had some flexibility, but we had like just a really bad situation with the owner of our company, basically. And so I was interviewing for other jobs around New York, and I was like, none of these, like where I am in my life, I have 3 kids now, I had 2 at the time, and where I was in my life, none of these jobs and roles were fitting what I wanted. And I said to my husband, who also worked at the Collegian with me, I was like, I think I can go out on my own. Like, I think I can do this. And worst case scenario, if I can't, after a year, then I'll just interview for jobs. Like, so it just felt like it wasn't something that I like dreamed of doing and was like planning to do, but that moment made it seem like the perfect thing. And it was the perfect thing for me because I'm making more money than I was making at the time. And I'm honestly working half the time. So I'm able to do the other things that were important to me, you know, being a mom and doing that role.
Still jealous. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it is pretty great in a lot of ways.
Great. Any more final questions? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming today. Especially thank you to Kelly and Liz for joining us and sharing your insight with us. I know I learned a ton, and I'm sure everyone else listening also did. So thank you for being here and your willingness to help us all out. I definitely really appreciate it, and I know all of the staff at the Collegian does. So it's been great chatting with all of you, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck, everyone. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Kelly,
Thank you,
thanks,
guys.
Liz. Appreciate it, guys.
Jordan, see you, Megan. See ya.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.